More jobs were created last month. That's good, but everyone is still upset that the unemployment rate is still too high. So why is it high? Tonight I'm talking to job creators, successful CEOs. My next guest created tens of thousands of jobs. How? And could they still do it in today's world? Joining us now is John Allison, former boss of BB&T, the 12th biggest bank in America. And Mike Whalen, CEO of Heart of America Group, which runs dozens of hotels and restaurants. So, Mike, I'll start with you. Could you do it today, what you did?
You know, I don't think so, and the reason is very simple. I had to have some bankers on Main Street, small guys, who would come and look me in the eye and say, Mike, you know, maybe you don't have a lot of credit, maybe you don't have a lot of cash, but I believe in you. And that character loan is the kind of thing that you do in the beginning, that seed capital. They're almost like venture capitalists. They're almost like small-town bankers.
They have to pick and choose which one is going to pay us back.
They do, and it isn't an underwriting standard that can be dictated by Dodd-Frank with 55 pages. It's kind of a gut instinct. I believe in you. I think you're going to do it. And you go back to the same group of small guys out there in little towns.
You're one of the once small guys. You lent money to people like him and now lend to lots of people. Could you have built the bank the way you did with today's rules?
No, I was just listening to Mike talk. BB&T started as a small business bank. My first 10 years, all I did was make loans to small businesses, a lot of them farmers. It would be very difficult to do what we did then today. It was semi-venture capital thing because the government regulations are so tight, including setting credit standards, and that's very scary. Particularly since the so-called financial crisis, in the sense that they've come in and changed the credit standards in the banking industry, making it very hard for banks to finance small businesses.
I can see my Occupy Wall Street viewers saying, good, because their lack of standards is what led to the implosion in 2008.
See, I don't think that's true. Here's what caused the financial crisis was a combination of the Federal Reserve printing too much money because we didn't want to have a correction. It led to a bubble in the residential real estate market in subprime housing. That was generated by a long-term government policy that goes all the way back to Lyndon Johnson trying to raise home ownership above what's called the natural market rate.
Plus Fannie and Freddie guaranteeing all
through
this stuff.
Freddie and Fannie. So it wasn't small business lending that caused the crisis. It was government policy in housing.
90% of the banks in this country are less than $1 billion. It's the small guys that have 37 employees and less than $1 billion of assets, where you go down and look the guy eye to eye, that is the ones that do it. It's a very simple process. Small banks give small loans to small young companies, and out of that group of things are the job producers.
All right, and you didn't intend to be. You were at Harvard Law School. And you didn't intend to become an entrepreneur. What happened?
I spent one summer as an intern in a law firm, and I said, I'm going to go crazy doing this. And my favorite toy growing up was my train set. I started a restaurant, which was just like my big train set. I got to play with it every day, and I get to pick who I played with. Right now we're building an all-green hotel that's going to have solar hot water heating and LED lighting throughout. And
because it ought to, or because you're getting subsidies from the taxpayer?
Because we're having a lot of fun doing it, and it's going to be a cool product when we're done.
How did you become the head of a monstrously successful bank?
When I joined BB&T, it was a really small bank, and worked up through the organization, really trying to develop myself, to tell you the truth. I had students asked me, did I want to be CEO and I want to make a lot of money? Well, I like being CEO and I like making a lot of money, but that was never my goal. My goal was to do anything I did better than anybody else had ever done it, to be world standard.
That's the goal of a lot of people working in business. Did you have to suck up to your bosses,
No.
or how come you reached the top?
You know, I did a lot of self-development. I'm interested. I read a lot. I spent a lot of time working on my personal leadership development. I've been assigned studying philosophy to try to get a set of principles that we used in our business. And I even did some what's called self-awareness because I was really good at math and I wasn't so strong working with people. Business people are motivated by money, but business people are mostly motivated by building. It's just fun. We want to create jobs. And this is something people don't understand. In a true free market, there is no real unemployment. Businesses will create jobs. It's government obstacles, one way or another, that create all unemployment, except some people are changing jobs, but what we call structural real unemployment. Businesses love creating jobs because it's fun.
Well, thank you for creating those jobs, John Allison and Mike Whalen. Stand by. We have more for you later. But let's go back to two of our CEOs. Banker John Allison, who got rich lending money to people, and hotel and restaurant boss Mike Whalen, who prospered by borrowing money. So, I mean, these are not venal people who do this. They're trying to protect us. Doesn't this protect us?
No.
No.
Why not?
Well, I think it was supposed to attack two things: systemic risk of too big to fail, and second,
It didn't touch that.
No, it didn't touch that. And the only people they're slapping down are, as I said, the bankers on Main Street, which were not the ones that caused the problem. So, stop systemic risk, too big to fail, and protect the consumer. And if you read that, I don't think it's accomplishing that either. So the law of unintended consequences smashes the job creation machine.
What's really scary about this bill, if you want to control an economy, control the allocation of credit, because that determines what gets built. The current administration, I don't think, is really socialist. What I think they are what I call statists, because they don't want the responsibility of running industries, but they want to control them in the back room, and then if something goes wrong, blame the bankers, right?
It's like slapping the wrong kid in the back seat, not slapping the one that's being quiet rather than the one that's raising Cain. The average small bank with 37 employees can't deal with this stuff.
They don't know what's legal or what's not.
No,
and yet,
they're paralyzed.
And yet, you CEOs have done a lousy job explaining this to people, because I think most Americans want more regulation, and the Wall Street protesters certainly didn't think there's enough. Here's one more sample of things they say.
We've talked a lot about regulation, but nothing's happened. What we need is some taxes on financial transactions and other basic, meaningful regulatory measures.
John, one of the myths is that the banking industry was deregulated. That was not so. We were just misregulated.
Yeah, Bush was the deregulator.
Absolutely.
He spent more on new regulations than any president before.
The privacy law, the so-called Patriot Act, Sarbanes-Oxley, the regulatory, we had an exponential increase in regulations under
But
Bush.
Glass-Steagall did go away under Clinton.
We did get rid of Glass-Steagall.
Didn't that free you up to be reckless?
No, it did not. If you look at Glass-Steagall, in my view, it played almost no impact in this crisis, because Goldman Sachs was an investment bank that was they were one of the people that got bailed out. They were already doing what they were doing, and the Federal Reserve, for their own reasons, decided to save Goldman Sachs. And the Glass-Steagall didn't matter.
Mike, you recently tried to start a steakhouse on a property you already owned.
Right.
Went to borrow money. What happened?
Actually, it was a hotel in the steakhouse, and my company is solidly capitalized. 30%.
Which it wasn't when you began.
No, not in the beginning. It was horribly undercapitalized. But today we're rock solid and have run it that way.
And you got collateral?
Oh, tons of collateral. Yeah, and we went to 25 banks in the Kansas City area, and one after the other said, "Oh, great project, great project." About 30 days later, they came back and said, "We are scared to make this loan because of the OCC coming in and second-guessing us on our next examination."
And yet, I mean, there is the intuitive feeling that problems are solved with these rules. After Enron, we got Sarbanes-Oxley.
Oh.
This will stop, and it didn't stop Bernie Madoff, but the result, I mean, the SEC admits Section 408.4 of Sarbanes-Oxley alone adds so much paperwork that the average company spends more than $1 million a year on it.
Dodd-Frank is to small business lending what Sarbanes-Oxley was to small IPOs.
But people keep saying, give us more. If a little more regulation, it'll protect us. It's instinctive.
Well, I think also people don't understand what happened. They get a very simplistic view of what caused the financial crisis. They don't want to think it was government policy trying to do something that sounds good, helping low-income people buy houses, when in fact it was an unintended consequence of a government policy. It wasn't failures in markets. It wasn't lack of regulation. But that's not what people hear. They've got the wrong, we're actually fixing the wrong disease.
Well,
that was easy.
thank you, John Allison and Mike Whalen.